have to keep tapping like that! You bloated sack of protoplasm!
I will make him happy again!
You idiots!
Everything in his life is seen through the lens of a cartoon. That's all he lives and breathes is cartooning, you know, and it's all he knows.
John's personality so permeated that project. I can't imagine it being done any other way than what it was.
He was very driven, very ambitious.
He had this sort of rock star status.
He's the best drill sergeant you'll ever meet, and drill sergeants do need to be cruel.
But underneath it all was just very ugly undercurrent.
You know, the whole thing is tragic. It is like a Shakespearean play.
Ren and Stimpy was innovative on every level.
It was an artist-driven show. The drawings, the paintings, the characters, the voices.
Why won't they leave me alone?
Ren and Stimpy was gorgeous. It was hand-painted cells, hand-inked. This was not done.
The influence of classic animation was extraordinary, and it was being digested and spit out in a way that none of us had ever seen before.
I thought it was like Tom and Jerry. If Tom and Jerry opened up a portal to, you know, hell.
It was unapologetic and disgusting. And you never got to see that stuff on other cartoons.
It's not just raunch. It's also like getting deep into the experience of the characters.
Ren and Stimpy kind of opened the doors, saying to everyone out there, you know, no more rules.
Their show built up a cult following amongst both adults and children and became America's most popular made-for-cable series in television history.
We were the kings. We were the bad boys of animation. We were making the funniest cartoon that anybody ever made.
In order to do what we did, it took intense pressure, and it all emanated from John.
But behind the scenes, there were a lot of things going on that were really damaging.
He called them beatings.
Some of it was torture, I tell you.
He said that I could go fuck myself.
You know, I still have nightmares about him.
Despite what he says, you know, nobody else worked harder to fuck it up than this guy.
It makes me sad because we were changing animation forever, and it all fell apart before it really got going.
Every single Ren and Stimpy cartoon that was made with a certain amount of pain involved. But that pain ended up in this creative result that is a work of art.
A single sentence explanation of Ren and Stimpy. Let's see, where do you start?
That's a really hard one. How would you describe it?
I don't know. Nothing else like it.
It seems to be about a dog and a cat, but it's a lot more than that.
It's an animated show about two friends who happen to be a dog and a cat. They live on the precipice of insanity and death.
Dead! Dead, you idiot! You know what dead is? Just like we'll be, we don't get out of here!
Even though now looking back, of course, there was stuff that adults would get, it felt like something that was just ours, and it was weird, but like you were part of it, like you just got it.
It was ostensibly a children's show, You know, it wasn't a primetime television series, it was a children's cartoon.
What a good boy.
Who pees in a children's cartoon? I mean, like a children's cartoon where you have a character named George Liquor. A children's cartoon where you have a ghost that comes back alive as a fully naked black man.
Man, what a blast.
What?
My, I've got to pack.
You don't realize what the state of the world of animation was in the 80s and early 90s. It was a travesty. It was an embarrassment. Poorly animated shows, mainly created with the intention to sell a toy line, but not with the intention to actually entertain either the kids or the adults who had to suffer through watching their kids watch those shows.
The culture was so conservative then.
One of our most important freedoms, the freedom of speech, was under attack by both conservatives and liberals.
Demons and wizards, we'll be burning that tonight.
We are going to keep on trying to strengthen the American family, to make American families a lot more like the Waltons and a lot less like the Simpsons.
All the censorship that was going on in the world, I think that is what John was pushing against.
John's a great designer, and he designed a lot of the characters. He was doing the stuff we'd all thought about doing, but nobody had the nerve to do. You know, he was sort of the Andy Warhol of animation back then. The guy that people were getting around, and people were thinking, wow, this guy's the new talent in town.
John's just obsessed with cartoons. I mean, the guy really couldn't do anything else. I knew him personally and socially, aside from working on him. He couldn't, you know, fix a flat. He couldn't drive. He didn't do anything else. It was like this thing. And it showed, of course.
He's drawing all the time in his brain. It's like he's got a pencil in his brain. So if he meets you, he seems very intense. He's drawing you.
John Kay was really talented and really funny and drew funnier than anybody around. And, you know, to him, the funniest thing in the world was Fred and Barney having sex.
Bob said, you know, he's the next Disney. We all kind of thought that John was going to be the next Walt Disney.
Yeah, I don't know if this thing... No. I'll just try to remember to sit up straight. So remind me if I start slouching, which is my normal position. Did all the other interviewees get do makeup too? This lighting looks awful bright. I look like a ghost. First time I ever saw an animated cartoon, I was floored. I couldn't believe what I was looking at because it was drawings that moved. And I was just shocked. How is this possible? This is magic. And that's when I was hooked. And I think I was probably about 4 or 5. I've had theories ever since I was a little kid. I'm always trying to analyze and figure out how things work and why they do this or that. So when I saw the cartoon, I was convinced that magic was possible. I had friends that I would give my theories to, and I told them the theory about cartoons must be proof of magic. One day, I was out with my dad, and he stopped in at a corner store somewhere, and I went straight to the toy rack. This long package with Huckleberry Hound on it, and I loved Huckleberry Hound. I tugged on my dad's jacket, and he was, Dad, you gotta buy me Huckleberry Hound. Buy me Huckleberry Hound. It's like, all right, here's your goddamn 15 cents. Bought it, and I took it home, and I opened it up, and there were these long strips, like film strips, of different scenes with Huckleberry Hound. So I read the instructions, and it said, cut these individual images out, pile them on top of each other, flip through them. So, this just seemed crazy, right? All right. So I'm flipping through it, and I see the animation. And I was like, wow! They all went flying. I was like, Eureka! It isn't magic, it's science. So then I had to call all my friends over to show them the flip books, right? Hey, I was wrong. This is actually physically possible. Well, they all thought I was crazy. They just liked the funny drawings. If I did a funny drawing, they'd laugh. So then I thought, well, I'll make it even funnier. So I'd exaggerate more and do crazier stuff with it. And I realized that's really the key to cartoons, is to make things so exaggerated, so caricatured, that people laugh. If you can make it funny, you win. You're popular. I saw a postcard with a picture of a chihuahua in a sweater standing next to this woman's leg. You could tell that the dog hated the sweater. It was humiliating to have to wear this sweater. So instantly, Grand Hawk came to life. From this, I kept drawing him, and he eventually morphed into something like this. His head was kind of egg-shaped, and long ears. Stimpy, when I started drawing him, and it didn't really look at all like Stimpy. Originally, it was just me doodling from memory the cats from the comic book cartoon called Gruesome Twosome that had these cats in it that had big bulbous noses. I didn't really discover Bob Clampett fully till I was an adult. When I saw his cartoons, I was just floored because they pulled you into them. The early cartoons were animated, drawn, designed, painted by professionals. People who had learned step by step through the 30s and 40s. I watched the decay of animation, which shocked me because I didn't think anything could make cartoons bad. I was an idiot. I was naive. I thought, we'll change it. And somehow I convinced a handful of my friends that it might happen. But I don't think they ever really totally believed it. I think Lynn did, because she had a lot of faith.
I was a huge fan of his drawings. He'd sit down and do these incredible drawings, and then he'd just sort of toss them aside. And I used to just pilfer them, like I used to steal them and put them in files at one point. It was ridiculous. And so I geek out over his creativity and his ability to just get something down right away, like immediate results.
At some point, Lynn and I made these presentation art and story Bibles. Somehow, I don't even know how I did it, I got meetings at each of the Saturday morning cartoon networks, which were NBC, CBS, ABC, and Fox was still fairly new, but they all had Saturday morning cartoons. So I went in there and pitched the cartoons.
I had never seen anyone take me through a storyboard like John did. He was possessed.
He performed every part, he did every voice. He would show you the board, but you didn't need it.
No one had cared for so long about cartoons that he was saying, wake up. I'm telling you a story that isn't like that other crap that you're seeing. Here's this new thing. So, wake up.
Nobody pitched like that. It was explosive.
Screaming and like acting out all the lines. He would roll around on the floor, he would get up, he would smash things.
I was like horrified. I have never seen anything like it ever.
His glasses hit somebody in the head once.
Okay, Beep, watch out, the glasses are coming.
That was John, and you walk out of there like, wow. Like if I was an executive, how could you not? You'd have to. How do you not hire that guy to do that?
You lousy, rotten idiot!
The executives in those days were mostly like moms. The cartoons were full of morals and dumb stuff. They were completely bland. So all of a sudden I come in with all these specific ideas and making fun of morals and things. Well, that didn't go over well. In fact, one of the networks had a security guard come and escort me outside. We read that Nickelodeon was looking for new Saturday morning cartoon ideas, but they didn't want to go to the big studios. They didn't want to go to Hanna-Barbera, Disney, or Warner Brothers, because they thought they would just get the same stuff that you see on Saturday morning cartoons, and they wanted something original and fresh. The first initial pitch with Vanessa went very differently than the same pitches I gave to all the Saturday morning cartoon networks. She didn't throw me out.
He pitched me a project called Your Gang. One of the kids in the project had a dog and a cat called Ren and Stimpy. I didn't like any of the projects he pitched me, but I did like those characters.
She just focused in on, who are these two characters here, this Ren and Stimpy?
There was an emotional element to Ren and Stimpy that was unlike any other. I'd never seen anything like it. It was edgy. It was probably a little bit above our demographics, and Nickelodeon was afraid of it. They weren't going to do it. So I called Jerry Laybourne, and I begged her. I begged. She was hesitant, but I talked her into 6 episodes.
My relationship with Vanessa right from the beginning was like this. We were 2 peas in a pod.
I was attracted to that passion and craziness because I have a lot of passion and I'm probably crazy too.
If Vanessa wasn't in charge of the new animation unit, this never would have happened. I don't think she analyzed anything. She just knew what she liked, which is extremely rare. It was just natural for her to do what she felt was right, which made her a perfect executive.
Ren, you're angry? You turned tootin'! I'm angry! I have never been this angry in my entire life! Hey! I feel great! I love being angry! Thank you, Stimpy. Happy to be of service?
Ren is as dysfunctional a character as you can get. I'll challenge you to identify with this character because he's a complete ass.
What do you mean you don't agree with me? Do you know who you're dealing with?
But somehow you love him. And if you get that out, like, from the very beginning, you just set the tone. This is who this guy is. He's a piece of shit. And I kind of want him to win, too.
Oh, yeah, it's great. Great for you. People always love the stupid one. But nobody ever loves the jerk. Everybody hates me.
Casting for Ren, I tried all kinds of actors. And I had all these people come in, some really good actors and stuff, and nobody quite could get the intensity of the insanity that I wanted to get into Ren. I tried everyone. So I finally just went in and I recorded it myself and said, I want it to be like this, and I acted it out and stuff. And then I listened to it and I hated it. But Nickelodeon said, well, you should just do it.
You have to keep tapping like that! You bloated sack of protoplasm!
John's voicing on Ren is, to me, astounding.
Wax paper.
There's episodes that I can't even believe how good and how emotional, and he's just, you know, you wouldn't. Why should he be good at voice acting? He's a cartoonist.
I've had this ice cream bar since I was a child. People always trying to take it from me. Why won't they leave me alone?
In the beginning, Ren was basically it was Peter Lorre, just psychotic.
You imbecile, you bloated idiot! You fat, bloated idiot! You were!
He was frail and tiny, but couldn't control his rage.
You broke it! You broke it! My voiced material possession!
Stimpy was an abject retard, but with a good heart.
Happy, happy, happy! Joy, joy, joy!
I did Stimpy,
which was based on a Larry Fine from the Three Stooges.
What's the matter with him? I'm still in one piece.
His voice was so sublime. Everybody could do Moe and everybody could do Curly, but nobody could do Larry. No one even cared about him. But I went nuts the little that he said.
We gotta help him.
He'd say, like, you know, hey, Moe, you put too much tinsel on the tree. And John said to me, I don't want him to sound like a depressed old Jewish guy. So we pitched him up, and he became very high-pitched, and he could adhere better to the parameters of a cartoon universe. You know, it would be like, you know,
Will you button me, Ren? Will you button me, Ren? Sure thing, pal. Good night, Stimpy. Good night, Ren.
You know, Stimpy was like really innocent and pure, totally naive, and he seemed to believe in everything.
Well, guess what the mailman brought you today? Nothing! This letter's for me!
Vanessa never liked when Ren was abusive to Stimpy.
Stop hitting Stimpy. You know, I called John. Stop hitting Stimpy.
How about that?
And to me, that was integral. That was the core of the show, is that Ren slapped him around.
Love. He says love. Stimpy.
I would always have scenes where you'd feel sorry for Ren, even though he's the asshole. You shouldn't feel sorry for him.
Oh, Stimpy. I'm so ashamed.
I didn't know that would translate into heart. I didn't set out to do heart. In fact, I was physiologically opposed to it. And Vanessa loved that part.
I think any great story brings out some emotional component. Ren and Stimpy particularly was funny and emotional. It was emotionally compelling, usually because of Stimpy.
There, Ren. There.
Stimpy loved Ren. No matter how much he was abused or treated badly, Stimpy loved Ren.
They're just as real and as fucked up and as messed up as normal people. And they have real problems and insecurities, and they drive each other crazy all the time, but they're absolutely inseparable because they need each other.
Bill? Buddy?
It's their relationship. You have this person who's really angry at the world, upset, should be like this or like that. He thinks he's a genius, maybe he's not. And then you have this really sweet other person who's sometimes an enabler.
You stupid!
It's kind of stylized toxicity, you know, and there's a yin-yang to it.
People always ask me if I identify with either of them. Well, I'm not going to say that I identify with an idiot. But I guess I do identify with an asshole. So Ren is the one I identify with more.
Well, John's clearly Ren, and Stimpy was Lynn. Never angry, just always heart first, feeling first. For me, in the beginning, Ren and Stimpy was a mom and pop shop. It was John and Lynn, and, you know, everyone else was support for that, you know, because they'd been together for 13 years or so. And she could draw just as well as he could.
While I was at Sheridan College, one of the assignments we had was to take a famous cartoon character and draw it. So I chose Merlin the Magician from Sword in the Stone, which was one of my favorite Disney movies when I was a kid. There was this really cute girl, and I saw her put her drawings down, and Merlin the Magician was one of them. But I saw that it had this really unique style that didn't look like what other people were doing. And I think I kind of fell in love with her right there. In 1979, I moved to California, to LA. I was missing Len. I said, why don't you come down here, Len? Sneak across the border like I did. I told her how. I hope I don't go to jail for this. Luckily, I'm a citizen now.
pictured it to be completely different, like Beach Boys, the beach, and, you know, Hollywood and Vine, and I thought that was all golden and crystal and sparkly, and it wasn't, and getting a job was really tough at that time.
I had trouble trying to get my style into the business. You know, when they looked at my stuff, they liked it, but they said, but it's like too Looney Tunes. It's been done before. Then after a while, I called Jim Gomez.
We both went to Sheridan College, and I met John there. And the union had gone on strike. The animation union had gone on strike the day we had showed up. It was the first strike in 40 years, so I ended up working at 7-Eleven.
We didn't have any money, so we had to rent one place.
It was a bachelor apartment. There was no bedroom. It was one room. There was 4 of us in there. It's 112 degrees out in Los Angeles. You know how it is here. Sometimes it gets unbearable. There's no air conditioning. There's roaches all over the place. You know, sometimes we'd stay up all night just killing roaches.
John bought all these roach traps, which we call Muhammad Ali roach traps. Had a picture of a champ on them. It was one of his more dubious business deals, and they couldn't get rid of the damn bugs. They're everywhere. It was like, oh my God, this is crazy.
I remember there's a big jar of pickles in the fridge. Those like big pickles. I think John liked big pickles too, so there wasn't anything to eat. Like there wasn't, we were really hungry. So.
Whenever I met somebody in the business who I thought was really good, I would take them over to John.
There's not a lot of these, you know, super specific people that have the ability to translate their personality or what they believe and what they feel through the pencil onto the paper. But whenever I found somebody like that, I would totally latch onto the person. Lynn was one. Jim Smith was one. Bob Camp. Bob and I had a good chemistry. We'd go everywhere together. We'd laugh together. It was a perfect partnership.
We'd listen to music on John's record player and watch cartoons, and we would share theories about animation.
I've had people say to me, I can draw in any style, which basically means they can't draw very well, because nobody can draw in every style, except for Bob Camp.
We had the audacity to call ourselves big shots, because John was always using that term, you know, someday we're gonna be big shots.
There was this naive expectation that we were going to make great cartoons because, after all, nobody was, so they would buy them from us because clearly nobody knew how to do it. And so if we offered them great cartoons, naturally they would get made.
Those guys did have like a real punk mentality. They were like, if we sort of set the tone how we want it to be, it'll turn that way. That's trip. That's a lot of hubris, a lot of balls.
And you know, at some point I realized we need our own studio, just so we can do what we were put on Earth to do.
And I think Bob came up with the term Spumco.
Where are we going, Bill? We're going to see the creators of Ren and Stimpy at Spumco.
The Spumco offices were kind of gross. These weird little dank rooms.
The best way I can describe that studio was it was a shithole.
Like we should all be in jail.
Spumco was this horrible old building that had been supposedly a brothel for Paramount, and it was like covered in ugly white tile. It looked like a giant urinal, basically.
It was so much fun. We all were like, you know, having a good time waiting for somebody to kick the door in and drag us out in the street and tell us to get the hell out, you know?
It's weird that they let us do it.
We all were being the bad boys, you know, being the Rolling Stones of the animation industry, and we pissed people off, and we were kind of a bunch of rude jerks.
It was John, Bob, Vincent. Vincent's just like Mr. Cool, calm, and then Bob's intensity. So Bob has the intensity between John and Vincent, but they're all demented.
If an alien spaceship landed and took everybody that was hanging out there, it would be a really bad sampling of the human race.
Lynn!
Okay. I think the excitement was like, wow, we really get to do this. How do we do it? You know, just wanting to get everything in there.
Lynn was the heart, you know, John was the brains, and we were all just, you know, playing different instruments.
Spumco was probably the greatest collection of talented artists. Not just animators, not just character designers, not just background artists.
It just stunned me, like how good everyone was.
I mean, Jim Smith was the best draftsman that I've ever met, probably in my life, if not for Chris Riccardi, too. And Bill Ray. He's an extraordinary artist.
I walk in, and there's Bill Ray painting these paintings that I think should have been in museums. This was a cartoon, and these were the backgrounds that were going to be in the cartoon that we're making here. Oh, my God.
We would use sponges to do dot pattern effects. These are makeup sponges. And when you're trying to get a transition of dark to light, you press it on there.
I've said for many years, and I believe this, there should be a coffee table book of all of Bill Ray's backgrounds from Ren and Stimpy. I mean, what a book that would be. He started doing abstract splashes of color to heighten the emotion, and everybody's stealing that today.
John knows what he wants, you know, and he knows what works, and he knows what doesn't work, and he knows what he likes. And I think he made all of us, he certainly made me a better artist, better color stylist, for sure.
John's got a ton of charisma, and his magic was able to bring really multi-talented people together in a unified force, you know, that had conviction and belief and stuff. If anything could be called genius, that's, you know, being able to mobilize people to come together to produce something great.
It's not rare to find people who have unique personalities. It's rare to find people who can tap them and put them on paper.
A lot of the stuff was just based on our emotional experiences, which we definitely tried to relive and make sure you felt whatever it was we were feeling at that time. When I was growing up, my mother was a Jehovah's Witness. I was forced to go out and go door to door. And you never know what's going to open that door.
The nipple salesman episode, there's a moment where Mr. Horse clearly is being portrayed as a sexual predator.
But I'll tell you what, though. Do you have any rubber walrus protectors?
Call the police. And, I mean, God knows how that got through.
Quick, man, cling tenaciously to my buttocks. Both of them.
You know, John, there would always be something in the cartoon that he wanted to slip by.
Their process was to bombard me with the most intense stuff. And, I mean, they did sneak some things through.
There's a very powerful supercharged vacuum cleaner. And he says this vacuum cleaner can suck a monkey through 40 feet of garden hose.
It can suck a monkey through 30 feet of garden hose.
And you hear that line, I was like, oh my God, how did that get in?
John used to hide little bits of drawing under the storyboard, and he would send a copy to Nickelodeon. He'd show it to me, and he'd go, dang, look what we got away with. Pull a Post-it back.
They just didn't catch it, you know, and then they were furious when they saw it. And we were like, look, it's in the storyboard.
Man, that's pretty.
We were constantly adding stuff, a little innuendo there, a little something in the background there. And Nickelodeon would say, you know, don't, we can't do that. And we go, oh, okay.
What can I do for you, officer?
Like the glass coffee table collection. And see, and I say that to some people, and people don't get the joke, so I'll just leave it there.
I got it.
There's also a great shot where people are throwing hats in the air. If you DVD slow frame through it, there's an intestine that flies up and a big turd shoots out the side and flies off screen.
There are things I look at now going, you know, where was I?
You can string the dingleberry garland.
I never knew what a dingleberry was. Everybody was laughing at dingleberry garland, and I'm like, oh my gosh, why are you laughing? It's so sweet. And everybody's like, okay. That one they got on me.
John was never more vulnerable than when he was pleading for me to get them to pass some jokes that he thought were necessary for kids to see. When I would say, look, I did what I could, but they're not going to let Ren eat his own vomit. There'd be this long silence on the phone, like he just couldn't fathom it, you know? He'd just be like, I mean, it's not like they're fucking.
He liked it.
So what does John Kay do? Does he hang out here? Or does he hang out like
He was just in here.
He's the king. He's the king. He's the Lord.
If you were outside the studio, it seemed like a cult. And if you were inside the studio, it was like, cult. It's not a cult. Oh, John. Yeah, I could see where people would think it's a cult.
At that time, there really wasn't anybody older who was really doing anything good like what he wanted to do. So it was like recruiting young people that were fresh and training them. So I was one of a handful of those people.
Coming into the industry, I felt like, oh, there's only certain things you're going to be able to do, so here's where you should set your heights, you know? But then with John, it was like, no, set him way over here. And for our age, for 18, 19, 20, that was what we were looking for.
When I first started working there, I have a really distinct memory of going like, I can't believe I'm here. Like, this is exactly where I need to be.
We were in the place we needed to be, and we were working out primally how to make the best cartoons.
It's like all of a sudden I'm like 18, 19, and I'm working on a show that is obviously revolutionizing TV animation. And I was so enamored of this personality, but in working at Spumco, I realized that it wasn't just John. John was really good at being a driving force. But behind that driving force came all of these people that made you care.
You know, the drawback with cartoons is they take so long to make because you have to animate it, and you can't get the cartoon up and running unless you're South Park. You're going to have to spend a year to get a season figured out.
Each cartoon takes 9 months to make.
Oh man,
I guess you'll just have to kill yourself.
yeah, we will.
As much as I talk about how much we screwed around, you still had to spend a lot of times indoors, sitting down, drawing hundreds and hundreds of drawings.
It's the nature of animation. All those drawings have to be done. It's madness. It is a mad medium in that 24 frames a second, even if you break it down.
So we were doing first episode, Stimpy's Big Day. You could see the pressure from the very beginning. Everyone was there drawing, really following John Kay's notes, trying to redraw, very intense. And all I could think of is, this is not gonna last. It's either gonna drive, I'm thinking of Lynn now. You're either gonna go nuts from this, or you're gonna go further and further down this rabbit hole.
But then, see, I was with John for a while as his girlfriend, so we broke up, so I left.
It was kind of like Mom's going, and we're left with Psycho Dad. But we have two Psycho Dads. We've got John and Bob, two alpha males who are overly opinionated. And this was like before we even finished the first episode of the series.
We were all trying to live up to John's idea of quality.
John was, willful, and he was eccentric, creatively volatile, hard to deal with, nasty, but he was the artist.
I think he wanted to sort of jump to the next tier of quality, and he sort of expected his artists to follow through on that, and when we didn't, he would call us out.
I've been called a dictator. I disagree with that.
He was the hardest director I ever worked for.
He had a sadistic edge.
I was screamed at least 3 times in public.
The artists that worked for me had more leeway than they ever had in cartoons they worked previously and the cartoons they worked on afterwards.
There were 2 factions. Some people thought he was a crazy person. But actually, John had a razor-sharp vision of what he wanted. And he really does see things nobody else can see. That's true.
John could be really tough. I would sit in there and I'm just like, okay, you're gonna say one more thing and I'm gonna take this fist and double it up and knock you off that stool. And I swear to God, it's like he had a psychic meter in his head for when that place was with me. And he would instantly go, but you did a really good thing right here. And that's really nice. And blah, blah, it's like, okay?
You know, it was a hard job because his standards were so high. It was an enormous amount of pressure, but we'd all signed up for that. And we'd all signed up for like no sleep and really long hours and coming in on the weekend.
I know in my case, and a lot of people's case, we just had that side of us that wanted to be attached to something really cool.
There was a lot of talk about, like, how could you work for this guy and da-da-da-da, he's such a jerk. I mean, you work for jerks in your life. But if you work with somebody who actually cares about what they're doing and you can take some pride in it, that is rare, actually. So I'd much rather work for the jerk who has pride in what he's doing.
He's like a cartoon character himself. I mean, you go eat dinner with him and he orders a salad and he goes, "Croutons, what the hell is that?" And you pick him up and throw him across the room. You know, he's badly behaved, you know, but funny.
John's secret is, if he doesn't get it the first time, he'll try 10 more times. And if that doesn't work, he'll try 100 times. He will do something until he gets it. He obsesses over getting it right. And if you're doing the thing right, it's never easy.
It's all about, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen, and everything is fair game, and you pick on everybody and everybody picks on you, and you know, you don't hold back any punches. It was like that at Ren and Stimpy. And I think if John K. were normal, the show would be more normal.
Hands. Dirty. The dirt won't come off.
A lot of people think that Ren and Stimpy is shock. To me, it's not, it wasn't shock at all. I really believe that it was characters expressing just emotions that are kind of horrifying to look at, or people are scared to look at, of depression and mental problems, delusions.
It's psychological. And John was a master at transferring what was here directly into your mind.
One thing I noticed early on is the characters were assuming the shape of their emotion. If they were depressed, they were kind of flattened down. If they were real happy, they were stretched and lively. And, you know, it was almost you were looking at symbols of emotions. And then when you had the expressions on top, it just made it that much stronger.
The characters emote, they change, they squash and stretch, they express themselves in a visually grotesque way.
We got to know who Ren and Stimpy were in their heads. We got to see psychologically what was going on in there.
What's happening again? My brain!
I think John really tried to get expressions that are kind of based on life and trying to do a cartoon take on something that's very specific, something complex, and not just like something out of the Preston Blair book.
There were a lot of studios and cartoons that had a very formulaic use of, this is what, you know, their lip sync chart looks like this. And, you know, that people just kind of plug it in. And John was like, no. While you were drawing, you had to make the expression. So if Stimpy was smiling, you were smiling while you were drawing. Or, you know, if he was angry, you had to really put it into the cartoon. So we had to study acting.
It takes a long time to become a good animator, just like it takes a long time to become a good actor.
You know, back then, laser discs was a big thing. So John and I would get all these laser discs so we could freeze frame them. We studied a lot of the sort of classic Hollywood actors that actually overacted. Kirk Douglas was a favorite.
Dirty pictures you put there today.
Dirty pictures.
Yes.
Kirk Douglas The amount of crazy expressions that goes into his face for one expression is like staggering. If you were to look at all the drawings and see what went into, you know, one of Ren or Stimpy's expressions, it would be like, wow.
One of the things I love about Kirk Douglas is he reminded me of my dad. And he reminds me of men in general, maybe not the men of today, but traditionally, men try to keep their emotions inside, but they can't ultimately because it builds up. The more you keep it inside, you don't cry and you don't yell, it's just churning like lava inside you. And I used to watch my dad. Whenever my dad was chewing me out or lecturing me, I'd see him like, he's doing this. I said, Johnny, and I could tell what he's feeling is, I don't want to kill the guy, but I have to somehow get through to him because he's such a damn moron. So he's holding back all this violence, and I'd see his face twisting and boiling. It's like, oh shit. But it was entertaining. You know what it's like when you're a kid and you're having dinner and you're supposed to be on good behavior, and the more you're trying to be on good behavior, the more you hear your friend snickering. And then you can't look at him, right? And you start to snicker. And then you watch your dad getting madder and madder, you know, until he breaks the fork in half. I was scared shitless. But you know, whenever I saw anybody doing some kind of extreme emotion, going through an extreme trauma, it's like a movie camera went off in my head. And I would just absorb it. I wouldn't even be paying attention to what was being said or what the meaning of it was. It's just a turmoil that I was watching. It's a man trying to be like a normal conservative, you know, Leave It to Beaver type dad to make me become a normal, conservative, clean-cut boy. You know, they can be proud of with his friends, can brag about it. That was never gonna happen. I spent most of my time in the basement just drawing and copying characters out of comic books, and that my dad thought that was nuts, and that reading comic books was destroying my mind. I think he was right, but I had to hide them under my bed and stuff, but he'd always find them. And then he'd blow up, start kicking the comic books all over the room. And but yeah, there was never any question in my mind that I was going to be a cartoonist. Come hell or high water. And my dad would get mad at me and everything. Only 1 in a million will make it in Hollywood, buddy. You think you're gonna be that one? I'm like, yeah. I think I'll be one of them.
At last I have control of your TV set. Are you receiving me?
Welcome to our secret headquarters. Thousands of miles below the Earth's crust. Shut up, you fool! How do we know we can trust them?
I realized that Ren and Stimpy was a success on a Monday after the first episode aired. I mean, everybody knew, oh, it's working.
Every week, the audience would get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Think about this. You're working for another studio. The shows are airing, and all the artists are running into a room to watch the shows.
We had a bet, and I bet that we would get to a 4.0. I was told it's impossible. And on our, I believe it was the 4th airing of the first episode of Ren and Stimpy, we got a 4.0. It was the first time in cable history.
Ren and Stimpy was just this weird show that people were talking about in the animation industry. And then all of a sudden, bam, it was like a hit.
See you guys at the Ren and Stimpy? You're going in? All right, I'll see you.
Golden Apple, a comic book store down the street, was having a signing with the Spunko artists.
We expected a few hundred people. We got a couple of thousand people showed up.
gonna be it.
We're driving down Melrose, like, oh, wow! And the line went literally around the block to get in to see us and talk to us about Ren and Stimpy.
Cartoons weren't fucking cool then. These were like sexy young people, you know?
These guys are the best animators walking on this planet. No lie.
It's like, you know, suddenly we had like girls following us back to Spumco to look at the studio.
I drove down to Golden Apple, and they were running Ren and Stimpy cartoons on a monitor. I walked in right as it was playing Space Magnus, playing the part about the ice cream bar. Everybody in the audience was chanting along with it. They had memorized the damn speech. I don't know the exact date, but it was shortly after the show aired. My dad, I think he called me and said, "Oh, you did it. I was wrong. You pulled it off. I don't know how. It's pretty weird stuff, but seems like everybody likes it. But don't do the space ones. The space ones are stupid."
Did you do any space ones after that?
No. I got so used to obeying my dad, following his rules. Vanessa faxed me a bunch of fan letters. So people, not only did they like it and laugh, they were kind of obsessed with it.
I was way into Ren and Stimpy when I was a kid. So I started drawing Ren and Stimpy. I took animation classes at a kids museum. And then when I was 13, I started writing to John Kay. I had built him up in my mind since I was 11 or 12 years old. You know, he had this sort of rock star status in the 90s. I had always wanted to work for him. I just thought that the drawings were just like really cool compared to anything I'd seen on TV, and I wanted to draw like that. I liked intensity in things. Ren's going insane, and Stimpy's tongue looks really gross, and so, you know, it's perfect for that age of kid.
I remember one night I was just sitting there in my living room and just feeling really sorry for myself. And I was flipping channels and Ren and Stimpy was on. And I thought I was having an acid flashback. I didn't even know what the fuck it was. I literally just turned on the TV and I saw it and I was like, oh, this is mine.
Loved Ren and Stimpy. Yeah, I mean, it kicked so much ass. It was so influential, and it was like disgusting, hilarious, and sexual. I mean, it's all clean. There's no bad language. There's no pornography. It's just that you can feel the throbbing energy behind the art.
That's it. You're in our secret club.
It felt like something that was just ours, and it was weird, but like you were part of it. Like you just got it.
My name's Scotty, and I'm just a regular schmuck like anybody else, but I just have a massive affinity for this cartoon and its merchandise. These are all new things like toilet paper and calendar. These are all the comics. These are all the factory direct ones. Little plushies here. The Ren and Stimpy slippers that they sold at Spencer's, and they sold them just like this. You had to have about like one club foot and one skinny foot. So I bought 2 pairs just so I had a pair of each. I could wear, you know, a pair of Rens or a pair of Stimpies. I've always been into cartoons, and I've never had a cartoon just grab me by the sack and said, "You're coming with us." This one did. I was, you know, young, just under 20, and, you know, I started smoking weed at that same time, so they were quite a fucking combo, I tell you that. They were playing them all back to back on a Saturday or Sunday, and a buddy of mine recorded on his VHS recorder, and I watched that thing until it was, I mean, almost obliterated. The tape was just so worn out. You would play it on slow, and you would just hit a button, and it would just take you frame by frame by frame by frame. And there was a different picture in every frame. It was, I mean, it was unreal. Whenever you see perfection, recognize it. And they had their perfect moment.
You know, in 1994, I think the merchandising for Ren and Stimpy was like $4 billion or something insane like that. No one had ever seen anything like that. You know, this was creator-driven cartoons. The whole created by, that being new, that turned it into an auteur form. Before, it was by committee, toys steered the show. It had to be a pre-existing something. But who created that? You know, who created the Transformers cartoon? Who created He-Man? You have to go way back to get Hanna-Barbera or Chuck Jones. Ren and Stimpy, created by John Kay, brought that back.
I wanted the world to know who did it. So I elevated the top artists like Vincent and Bob and Jim, Chris Riccardi, but I had to fight to be allowed to do it because they didn't like the idea at Nickelodeon.
Well, Stimpy, what's on TV tonight? Oh, joy! Hey, Ren, it's Commander Hook.
People tend to think that if you have a good character, you come up with Bugs Bunny, wow, it's gold. But look at how many times they've tried to revive Bugs Bunny with different people doing it. None of them ever come close to the success of the original Bugs Bunny. It's not Bugs Bunny that is the golden property. It's the artists.
I think a lot of great art hides in kids' cartoons.
What Ren and Stimpy had that other shows didn't have were these close-ups. So you'd have like Ren and Stimpy doing something and then something disgusting, and they would have this like weird, jarring music, like, rah, rah, and it would be a close-up of just very detailed, topographical look at someone's skin or a booger. And you never got to see that stuff on other cartoons. It was unapologetic and disgusting.
If we're gonna show a still, it better be great. It better be amazing painting. It better be this great painting we can hold on, you know, and be disgusting, you know, as gross. And we're gonna make you sit on it because it's so beautiful, but yet it's so gross.
I didn't think of myself, oh, I'm gonna push boundaries. I was more about like, how do you get quality?
Ren and Stimpy was an anomaly in its time. He did not want scripts. Script-driven shows were like anathema to us and to John. He didn't want to have to follow someone's script. He felt like cartoonists were funnier than writers. And to a degree, he was right. I mean, for this show, he was right.
He felt like it was important for him to convey to me my uselessness. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I said, didn't we just have waffles and chicken? Now you're telling me I'm nothing?
People who aren't cartoon writers are not very good at writing cartoons. Just like if you tried to write a music score without knowing how to read music, without never playing an instrument, and tried to describe it in words.
John's legacy is that he reset the clock on animation, that he re-established the storyboard artist and the artist in general as the king of animation.
You had to be constantly moving forward. There was a lot of, oh, this part of the drawing is working. I'm keeping these eyes, but they're too big, so I'm gonna size them down on the Xerox machine, and then I'm just gonna work on the body a little bit, and then you cut and paste into it. So now you've got like 3 or 4 or 5 different elements, and then you're using liquid paper, and so you've got this like just mess, and your pencil would go over all these, you know, levels of paste and liquid paper.
Any other cartoon production, they would look at our storyboards and say, that's a mess. It didn't matter. The goal was to be funny.
Ha!
The one episode that I really still think about today is Toothache.
John was always like grabbing somebody to go to lunch. He hated being alone. So it was this Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles, world famous. So he came up with the whole idea of a Ren's toothache with the nerve endings and the stink. And he's like, yeah, so anyway, you know, his teeth fall out and the stink's coming out and this fly's eating the shit in a fucking cat pen and it stinks so bad. And this giant black guy behind him turns around and goes, hey, I'm trying to eat here. I don't know what you guys are talking about. It's just disgusting.
Hey, we're trying to eat here. And you stand here airing out your stinky old gum holes.
The genius of Ren and Stimpy wasn't how far it went in being outrageous. It was the fact that an outrageous show could also have so much heart. And with that heart, you know, you suddenly had shows that had a balance to it.
Yeah, that was a great episode. The name got changed to Son of Stimpy, but it was originally called Stimpy's First Fart. That drew a lot of criticism. Like, people were like, all right, you're really hitting bottom. And I remember John saying, oh, no, this is high art.
You're very sympathetic for Stimpy in his situation, you know, and he's heartbroken because he lost his fart, you know, but still it kind of makes you want to cry.
I hate pathos. It drives me crazy because it's contrived. It's just like shoving it down your throat. Vanessa encouraged me. Can you do more scenes in your cartoons with heart? You know, as I say, I was totally opposed naturally to it. So instead, I came up with a way of making fun of it. If I'm going to make people cry, I'm going to make them cry over the most ridiculous reasons.
I thought I'd never smell you again.
And I actually enjoyed doing it. Once I got to the point where I could make fun of pathos, I thought, wow, this is a great ingredient. Most of it came from Vanessa, but she didn't urge me to make fun of it. She urged me to make her cry.
It's so good to have you home. Come in and sit by the fire.
If your mentality, like John's I think sometimes was, is let's see how much I can get away with, after a while that kind of becomes self-defeating, how much I can get away with. It just becomes an end unto itself.
You know, the idea was let them bring as many ideas, but then pull it back because it's still television and it's still storytelling. It's not just gags. It's not just being outrageous for the sake of being outrageous. If it was left up to just letting it go, there's no way it would have been as good.
Hey, let's us hang somebody.
Oh my God.
He goes, yeah, we ain't hang nobody in a long dang time, but who we gonna hang?
Really with John, you know, probably the person who dealt with him the best was Bob.
He didn't draw in my style before Ren and Stimpy, but once we started hanging out, he just picked it up overnight. I didn't have to give him all the theories about maintaining guts and all this stuff. He just did it.
We were missing more and more deadlines, and I approached John and said, you know, let me direct.
Bob was the perfect extra director. He wasn't as obsessive as John. Bob just wanted to be really funny, and that's it. Just funny, you know, funny drawings, funny gags, and John could do his craziness and pushing the envelope.
When John and I worked together, we made magic.
Stimpy's invention, which some would argue was the ruination of the entire Ren and Stimpy franchise just because it took so long to make Maybe it was all worth it just to have that one episode, just in terms of something that gets you on every single level and deserves, in my mind, to be in the pantheon of great cartoons.
Hey, what is this thing? Get it off of me!
It's the happy helmet, Ren. Now you'll always be happy. And this is the remote control.
Whee!
Hey, it works.
Hey, what's happening to me?
I think John succeeded in conveying what a cartoon nervous breakdown would be like. Ren's having his mind controlled, and it's tearing him apart. It's part horror story, part comedy, part cartoon.
Get loose! Control!
Will
Strong! Body weak!
For Stimpy's invention, you've got these storyboards that were really broad and hilarious, and it was a Bob Camp storyboard, and it was one of the funniest storyboards I'd ever read. A lot could be learned from comparing that storyboard to the layouts that were done, particularly the ones that were done by John. He was like doing graphic things that were really unusual. Ren is wearing the happy helmet, and he does this bit of dialogue, and he says the word go. I believe the letters G-O are in his mouth.
I must go do nice things!
And I remember that kind of blew my mind, like that the level of interpretation was getting really right-brained.
One of the things about John was that the bar was so high. Every time it passed to the next guy, it had to be plussed, starting from the story, moving forward, all the way to the final.
On Stimpy's invention, John would fix drawings after they had been shot. The scene was done. It was finished. And John would grab the scene and start redo drawings.
John decided to take the show, all the elements that we had, into his office. He locked the door and wouldn't let it go out of the studio until he reviewed the whole show and did his thing on them.
It was incredibly horrible, emotional time for about 6 months there, when we were just skidding without delivering a show.
Nickelodeon came to me and said, Ren and Stimpy is so successful, we want to do 20 episodes now.
That's normally an exciting thing in the TV world, but the reality for John was like, who's gonna create all this stuff? I can barely deliver with the crew we have now.
I said, well, we'd have to multiply the crew by 3 and some. And they said, go do it. And here's where we get back to what executives, network executives, think makes a good cartoon. They think it's the idea. Once you have the idea, then you can just fill the studio with bodies to do all the drawings. It's a crazy idea.
He kept going, well, I have to train all these guys. I said, no, you don't. Hire people that know how to do it.
So I knew that was going to be a problem and frustrate everybody because I'd have to split my time now into 3.
My big job was schedules and budgets and getting us on track, and we were way off track. Shows were delivering months late. So that's why I originally had been brought on. I think in my first interaction, with John, he said, oh, so you're the studio hack that's been brought on to, watch us.
We weren't even very far into season 2. We were already hundreds of thousands of dollars over budget, months behind schedule. I mean, we missed the air date for the very second week of Ren and Stimpy, and we had to rerun the first week cartoon. That pissed off the advertisers big time, because John couldn't let the cartoons go.
He told me one time he was quite sad about it, and he said, I wish you would just come in here, punch me in the face, and take the work and give it to him. Just physically take it from me.
The whole secret in animation is to get the director to sign off on that stage, whatever it is, that storyboard, that layout. If John wouldn't approve one drawing, then that footage is sitting there.
What are you doing?
John, he was obsessing out on way too much and being the bottleneck in production. And it ended up creating some great cartoons. But then again, I know the cost of those cartoons, and it's not just money.
You know, he was really struggling under all the pressure of it.
He became aggressive. I noticed how he started abusing his artists.
We would leave at like midnight after doing all of our scenes and stuff, but John would stay up. The man didn't sleep, and he would stay up going through everyone's work.
You just have to know that people were so punished. I mean, they were punished trying to get John's approval for a drawing.
You would like slave away, and like you might be really happy with your scenes that you'd done, and then they'd go to John. He was like, "This isn't a drawing. You got to redo this." You know.
There wasn't a single layout I did that didn't have at least one drawing in it that he would throw away. You know what I mean? At least one drawing.
The artist would finish the scenes, bring them back to get them checked. Did they preserve the storyboard expressions? Did they push it further? Or did they tone it down? Well, if they toned it down, they'd get what people called a beating.
Literally, like, throwing the layouts out on the floor. Like, look at these. This is not acceptable.
He had all the qualities of somebody who's like borderline, like a Hitler type, you know, like just total intolerance for anything weak or unsatisfactory. So it'd be like, you know, you draw like a fag. I mean, at one point I did kind of lose it and I quit and I said, you know, this kind of criticism doesn't do anything to make me better. It just, you know, makes me hate you. And I went home and of course he was really apologetic and said, no, come back, you're really important. So there was, you know, there was a lot of psychology at play with the whole thing, you know.
It was Bob Camp who I remember the most. It was like John was really treating Bob poorly. He was rejecting all of his drawings. He was complaining to him that this is no good, that's no good. And it was really affecting him.
Please, God, please.
John did that to a lot of people.
Trying to make a good quality show with all these handicaps we had in the second season, I was on the verge of insanity, I think. And they would add these obstacles of throwing whole storyboards out after the story had been approved. And our notes got way longer. That was the most frustrating thing about the second season.
That was hard for me because I got a lot of pushback. Initially, John and I would work together, and it was just a give and take, and it was fun, and he would listen, and then it was over.
Hello! I'm George Licker, American.
We had been working on the boards for, it's called Man's Best Friend, I think, the first show of the second season that never got aired. John pitches this idea. We do the boards. They get approved. And I go, wait, what? I get him alone in a room. He's never lied to me. I go, John, are you sure they've approved this board? And he goes, yeah, they did it.
Now come on, boys! Attack! Put you on my kind and beloved master! I can't! But I can!
Man's Best Friend. I don't like it. It was extremely violent.
Oh! No! It's discipline that begets love.
Nickelodeon is making an investment in kids programming.
You must learn your place.
And I have to say, when we saw it, I was just like, I mean, it is up there with Samuel Beckett. It's one of the best things ever made, but it's not for kids.
The executives at Nickelodeon thought George is mean. Absolutely not. But he thinks he's doing you good.
Today's lesson is discipline. Now, in order to learn discipline, you must learn to misbehave. Now, you see this over here? This is a couch.
After he tells him, don't get on the couch, he says, well, what are you waiting for? Get up on the couch.
Come on, make me mad. Make me mad or I'm gonna be really mad. What did I tell you about sitting on my couch?
It's twisted logic. It's logic of authority figures. It's my dad. George Liquor is the first character that ever just popped into my head instantly, and I knew almost everything about him. He's a moral, God-fearing man who believes in being tough. Tough love. That's what it is. It's tough love.
That's a good boy. It's discipline that begets love.
In the cartoon, you take real life emotions and you exaggerate them. I identify with almost all the characters, and I try to put something into them that I feel myself. George Liquor, I don't identify with personally, but I identify with having to yield to authority.
He called me to give me feedback on my notes that I was giving him. And he said that I could go fuck myself, that he wasn't going to take notes anymore, that he made the network, and he is the star.
He sent a note to the network saying I can no longer be held responsible for budgets or deadlines. Sorry. When I read that, I was like, oh my God. And I got the biggest marker I had, and I drew a giant pair of balls on his door. Because, like, clearly he had the biggest ones in Hollywood.
We failed at working together after that. It just failed. You know, I'm going to do whatever I want to do, and it's going to cost you whatever it costs. And as an executive for a company that, you know, I was beholden to, it didn't work it doesn't work that way. And I just walk down the hall and tell Jerry Laybourne that I had an out-of-control train and that I had an episode I couldn't air, and I had, you know, outlaw artists on Ren and Stimpy, which I loved, but it was hard.
They approached me and they said, look, we want you to finish the show.
People within my studio, and we're plotting behind Spumco to start a new studio and take it over.
The network was talking to me about it and saying, you know, we don't know if we're gonna have to fire John or not. We're gonna have to close the studio, and I'm trying to talk him out of it and everything.
Bob was smelling blood, and he's like, yeah, fuck John, you know, he's abandoned his duties, dereliction of duty, you know. When, you know, we do it without him, you know, he started talking in that way.
Nickelodeon, behind my back, would tell them, you're the backbone of the show, you're the brains. We don't need John, and we'll triple your salary.
Everybody was angry, and I told them that I had talked to John.
I was shocked. I said, if you do this, you're gonna be right back where you were before Spumco, where you have no creative say. And you're screwing all the people who built this up. But they went because they thought of the glory. oh boy, now I'll be the big cheese. Even though I'd made everybody, all the top people, big cheeses, but not big enough.
I remember the final conversation with him, and he was just like, please, you know, don't do this. And I said, I can't not do this. We have to do this. You're the one who created it. You created this mess, we didn't. And he denied it, but there was no choice.
Actually, he called me. Yeah, he said, guess what? I've been fired. And he actually said this. I'm actually kind of relieved.
It was really sad. I was crying. John was almost crying. We gathered everybody into one big room and said, we have to give you guys 2 weeks notice. We don't have any more money. They're not paying us anymore. So it was horrible.
The hardest thing really was just the fact that we were having so much fun and doing such great work that it was a real shame that it had to stop.
The artists had to make a decision about stay with John or come with May and Nickelodeon and produce a games production. We created a new studio in about 3 weeks. We put it together.
And it was just Bob saying, you know, you have a job if you want it. You know, he would say to a lot of people, he said, you know, Bob, I'm not going to games. And what? Traitor, fucking traitor. You know, he's all in my face, spitting mad, you know, like, and then Vincent, you know, he's like, whoa, he's like, I'm not going either. Like, what?
It was devastating. It was horrible. And I knew that it would make me look bad in some ways, but I knew I had to do it, you know, because otherwise the show would die. Or worse, they would give it to someone who would candy coat it and make it into something that wasn't what it should have been. John and I were the best of friends, and I haven't seen him since that day in 1992, and I don't know if I ever will again.
You know, it was burned. Who wouldn't be burnt? You build something over years and years, and it's taken away overnight for somebody else to build something. These are characters that you developed for years, that you love. You're losing your kids, basically.
It broke my heart. I loved the characters. They were my babies. It just was a car accident for me. And I struggled. I really, really struggled.
We really did try to make the most we could out of a very unhappy situation, but, you know, we did get death threats. I mean, we had to put surveillance up.
They sent this card with this bag over this German Shepherd's head with a hole in the bag and a snout coming out and a gun down the German Shepherd's mouth. And it said, "You're gonna die, bitch." And that was one of many.
Is there anything you would have done differently?
We're back to that one. That's an impossible question to answer.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
There's
nothing I could have done about how it turned out. It was fate or something. I wouldn't, you know, if I was going to change something, I'd say, let's not do 20 episodes.
That's not my Ren. Not my Ren. No.
Yeah, it's funny when people say, oh, you stole Ren and Stimpy from John Cristofalusi, or the network stole. Well, the network owned the copyright. He didn't bring Ren and Stimpy to us. I picked Ren and Stimpy out of one of his properties. This idea that he brought us a show and, you know, we took advantage of him and took it away, it's just not, it's not true. He didn't pitch us a show called Ren and Stimpy until we developed it with him. And the one thing that he wanted back, like his fight at the end, you know, give me the character George Liquor back. I'm like, take it. The last thing we want is that character. It's a horrible character. It's abusive, bully, horrible, insane character.
You know, later I left, so I was just unbridled, left unchecked John.
I mean, there's a reason why there's a difference from the original Ren and Stimpy to Ren and Stimpy Adult Party. It's because he lost a lot of the people that gave those characters heart and feeling and appeal.
After losing the show and losing that expression, and I wasn't there, I lost all contact with him, but I think in real life, you know, that's when his behavior got really bad.
I had always imagined what it would be like to meet him because I wanted to work for him so badly.
Two of the girls that were in charge of the library and the fan club, they brought me this big, thick binder from one particular fan named Robin Bird. I was amazed that somebody 16 years old could write so well and could express their emotions so clearly. Some of the things she conveyed was that she was lonely and depressed, that nobody understood her. She used to call me Mr. Falusi, which was very cute. She also sent a videotape of her sitting on the floor in her room, talking to me directly.
That did it. He responded to me. I had just turned 14 when I first heard back from him.
I was falling in love with her letters, and I knew that probably is not right, but I was just so smitten by her personality and her letters. And then when I watched the videotape, it's like, holy cow, this girl is amazing.
It had developed into this weird sort of romantic thing over the time that I had been talking to him.
In some of her letters, she would put double entendres about sex and things.
This is the guy who's been like saying like dirty stuff to me for 2 years and like talking to me on the phone and late at night. The first year of that, really as a little kid. When I was 14, I was still a little kid.
And then her mom sent her out for a summer after I visited them. And, you know, she was an intern at Spumco for a while.
And then when I was 16, I moved in with him. I thought, I'm getting offered a job, I'm getting offered an internship, there's someone who can take care of me. So I went with it because it's what I had always wanted and what I thought I still wanted.
Well, she was too young, and I freely admit that. It was a bad decision. But she was so convincing.
My entire adolescence, so 14 to 21, was owned by him. His work was so wrapped up in his life, that was his life, so it was my life too. So it was just like you lived in the kingdom of John. And, you know, I still have nightmares about him. I was isolated from everyone I knew. It was almost like there was this mandate not to talk to me. I was sad all the time. He blamed me for that. I'm making you happy. Why aren't you happy? About women's bodies all the time. I would cry at work, and he would tell me how inappropriate that was. Indoctrination type stuff. Bertrand Russell essays about non-monogamy. What are you trying to tell me? No, he just really had no response to actual feelings. He's gross. He's weird. He's eccentric. He's sick. There was a brief break in there where I went and worked at a couple other studios because I just needed to have my space. But I came back to him. When I came back, Katie Rice was there.
Hey, this is Katie Rice. She is one of the young artists I was telling you about who sought me out because she grew up watching Ren and Stimpy, right?
Mm-hmm. He had literally flown her out like 2 days after I moved out of his house. He just started hiring kids, you know, because they're gonna have that devotion to him.
Katie is the princess of sexy girl artists.
I had matured a bit. I could tell that, you know, the stuff that has been going on for the past 5 years is not normal, and so I left. I ran, and I thought, I can't go back to LA. No one will hire me. That 16-year-old me that could do anything was just squashed.
You read the article, I assume.
I read parts of it, and then I had to put it down.
The parts that you
See, I don't want to, like, complain about. I don't want to get into details, because then you have to drag other people into it, and, you know, it's just more people getting mad at each other.
You know, I don't know what he's been up to lately, except I have names of lots of girls he's tried to get with, because they've talked to me.
Well, I've officially retired. Not exactly by choice. I still have tons of ideas and characters and things I would love to explore. So all that's gone. It's my own fault for not being smarter or more responsible.
John didn't just turn into this. John has, I think, been this person for a long time.
He would have us over at his house for parties, and he got drunk enough. You know, he would talk about young girls being, you know, the hottest.
I talked to his most recent assistant, and she was crying and sad about it. And she's like, "That's not the John I know. He never. Yeah, I mean, he would say inappropriate things because he's kind of a man-child."
That whole male locker room thing, I didn't take it seriously enough. I'm making no excuses. It's just like it never occurred to me that a guy would actually pursue that.
I think that his abusive nature and his God kind of thing, I just wasn't surprised. I was also really extremely angry. It hurt. It hurt that he used
Ren and Stimpy that way to lure girls into his fold. It was upsetting. So that made me sad.
I got a message this morning that made me almost cry because the way she put it, she was like, you are protecting all of the little girls who never put their crayons away.
She came out, she said she was hurt. It was she felt like she was taken advantage of. Knowing that is how she felt, what would you say to her?
I would definitely apologize to her and explain that I didn't see things the same way as she did, and I should have. I would admit to what I shouldn't have done, that I did do, explain how guilty I feel about it, especially when she says now how hurt she is by it. I really feel awful about that. And I'd ask her to forgive me and try to explain that, I always had, ultimately, her best interests, from my point of view, were her best interests at heart. And I never wanted to lose friendship with her.
I think the 2 words, I'm sorry, would that be part of the
Or didn't I say that? I would definitely tell Robin I'm sorry, really, really sorry, because I didn't realize how affected she was until that article came out. And it just made me feel complete shame and guilt and felt like the lowest creature on earth. So I would love to, I'd love to tell Robin in person. If she watches this, give me a call, please.
The created by moniker, is John's legacy. But in the end, it's what stains the show. Well, Vincent said, now the characters are covered in shit paint, and that's heartbreaking.
Basically, this show is a bastard child, and it's fucking always gonna be. And it's still, right up to now. It's easy to blame John for that. It's like, well, clearly, nobody else worked harder to fuck it up than this guy, despite what he says,
People have sent me pictures of their comics in the garbage can and stuff like that. And I'm not going to tell them not to do that. But if someone is really conflicted about it, then I would say, look, just don't think about him. Think about how you were happy when you were a kid and you would watch Ren and Stimpy, draw Ren and Stimpy. I don't really find anything good in it for me anymore, but I don't see why someone would have to pull out a part of their childhood just because of what's in him.
The show is the show. And there were a lot of creative people that contributed to it. So whether you like me or hate me, I would hope that wouldn't color your enjoyment of the show, because, there's Bob Camp and Jim Smith and Lynn Naylor and Chris Riccardi and on, all these talented people that contributed to the show.
People don't know all the different people that came together to create Created By. And that's how you get a SpongeBob. That's how you get a South Park. That's how you get everything that followed. None of that would have happened without Ren and Stimpy and that Created By card.
The current day examples of shows that I think were influenced by Ren and Stimpy are all of the shows.
Its ongoing impact is the way it affected and changed the way people worked on cartoons, looked at cartoons, and, did cartoons afterwards.
It's all there, you know, from character design to expressions to timing. You know, it influenced a great deal.
It has much validity as a Eugene O'Neill play as it does a Daffy Duck cartoon. It's all about addressing the human condition.
And I think a lot of us somehow do feel a sense of gratitude towards John. You know, this group of people, this thing, you know, I would never take that credit away from him. Some of my favorite artists and musicians and actors, comedians, some of the most talented ones just tend to be the ones that suffer the most in terms of interfacing with reality.
It's not necessary for someone to be like that to create great art. You can have that going on in your head, and you can use it to make art. In fact, you can work through it with art. That's what a lot of artists do with their pain. Pain does create great art, I do believe that, but you don't have to keep inflicting pain to create great art.
You know, when you make something that people really like, they sort of expect you to be perfect. And once people know you for real, a little of the magic is worn off. Oh, he's a human like everybody else.
Bye.